Welcome to an emergency edition of the Andy Staples Show presented by Sling. So much happening in and around Nebraska, although the happenings were all basically in Iowa City on Friday. I'm here with Max Olson and Ari Wasserman. We just watched Nebraska take a 24-0 lead, try to give the game away, wound up winning anyway. And oh, by the way, they might have figured out what coach they're hiring. Does that about sum it up, Max?
Yeah, I think that about covers it. That was did not see that coming from the Huskers to wrap things up. And I mean, I don't know, it's one of those like the classic, like, are you impressed by one team or are you like just deeply disappointed in the lose?
I'm just disappointed in Iowa.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. And we've talked about this all year. What if their elite defense and special teams had a bad game? Like they did for a lot of this game. Perhaps if you had a functional offense, they can bail your ass out when you're playing a bad team and you have a bad game from those two units.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily sure that Nebraska's in the situation either right now where they don't just get credit for getting it done. You know what I mean? Like Iowa is what it is, but
I give Nebraska a lot of credit because they did score on this defense. You know, they hit a big long touchdown pass.
They Iowa.
They did. They out Iowa'd them for a half and then hung on for dear life.
Yes, and it's like funny because I cannot believe with the way that Iowa's offense was going there at the end of the third quarter that they had two different possessions down one possession. Not only did they get within one score with the ball back, they punted and then got it back again. But yeah, that was something, man.
A lot of grab ass, sorry.
It was the most Big Ten West thing in the history of mankind that Nebraska on a day like today, which is significant for other reasons, knocks out Iowa from the Big Ten West championship. But I will say that this is the best possible scenario for the entire sport and Iowa fans. One, because Kirk Ferentz can't keep getting away with this.
True.
And I thought he was going to get away with it again for a second there. And two, I think that Iowa fans would probably trade this win for a potential discussion in the offseason that doesn't about the offensive coordinator that doesn't get met with, well, we made the Big Ten championship game. So, and new potential team in the Big Ten championship game. So three things.
Right. Let's set that up. Purdue, if they beat Indiana, they're in. If they win the Old Oaken Bucket, they also win the Big Ten West. If they lose, Illinois can be in by beating Northwestern. If Illinois loses Northwestern and Purdue loses Indiana, I guess it goes back to Iowa. I don't want to even think about
what. Wait, say that again.
At that point, what if Illinois?
Is there a scenario where Iowa can still go?
I don't know.
Guys, I can't possibly comprehend a scenario that involves Northwestern pulling an upset here.
Illinois, exactly.
Yeah, don't ever underestimate the Iowa force to Indianapolis.
I mean, someone has. Does Minnesota go at that point? Like, if they beat Wisconsin, do they go at that point?
I can't even engage in this. I don't want to.
It's terrifying. It's horrific. I mean, look, as Ono224 points out, on the day that USA and England tied 0-0, a Big Ten West shakeup does feel appropriate.
Yeah, it does. You know, I think I know that Petrus got hurt early in this game. They're missing Laporta. Like they're missing pretty important pieces here. But if you told Kirk Ferentz,
they're missing Laporta, but they still only threw to the one really good tight end. It's just Lachey this time. Like every time I'm watching Lachey catch a ball, I'm like, why don't you just throw it to Laporta and Lachey when they're both healthy instead of just throwing it to Laporta?
Yeah. Offensively, that would help him a little bit. I had to look this up during the game just because I was so curious. How many points has Iowa even scored in a quarter this season? Like what are they capable of? They're averaging 6.5 points per game in the second half this season, guys. That's what going into this game. 6.5 points per game in the second half.
When they had the ball down, was it 24-7 in the middle back end of the third quarter? Their offense was reminiscent of what it would look like if a team were trying to clock it.
Yes.
I mean, like it looked like they were trying to run the clock out. And the fact that they got within
capable of running a hurry up offense. Like they don't have it in the playbook.
Yeah.
So to be down 17 going into the fourth, if you told Kirk Ferentz that going into the game, he'd say, yeah, we're definitely losing that game. Like there's just no way.
And I had the ball back. I mean, I would just be more satisfying to watch them throw downfield 4 times in a row and get 4 incompletions or turn it over than do what they did. Because it's agonizing to watch.
Fellas, the Wolfpack just won.
That's right. UNC missed a field goal again from close.
Oof.
And the Wolfpack win.
It's kind of a kick on the knackers for Clemson, too, a little bit, huh?
A little bit, yeah. That doesn't help. Although they did beat NC State. So there you go.
Yeah.
It all works out in the wash. But so,
NC
as you
State
said,
with Devin Leary, which was a top 3 win, in my opinion.
Thank you, Clemson beat writer, yelling at
we agreed to this. You told me.
All right. So, as Ari said, Kirk Ferentz probably can't get away with it anymore after this. He's going to have to change offensive coordinators or retire and change everything. It's not really that complicated. Like, I realize that's your son, but Brian Ferentz isn't stupid. Like, he knows he's not done a good job. He's going to get bought out. Like, there's nothing more to this. But
yeah, I looked it up at the end. If Iowa had only scored 163 more points this season, they would have had a top 50 scoring offense this year.
Oh my God! No. Well, no, Max. See, you're not giving the defense enough credit there.
Defense did some of that. No, there's no doubt.
Yes, the defense scored some of those points. Like it's a misleading stat that's where it says
it is a misleading stat because Iowa's defense should have scored 100 more points this year and done its part. Yeah, that's true.
Is there a scenario that you guys could see where Brian Ferentz is still the offensive coordinator next year?
No,
there's no way.
Absolutely not.
Like A&M makes a big run at him and they give him a contract to stay. What are you thinking?
What? Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the scenario. I mean, like, could Kirk Ferentz just go, "It's my program. We're doing it my way." I saw improvement in the back end of the year. I believe in him, and we're doing it this way.
Theoretically could, but when every offensive player transfers, that would be a problem.
Right. Yeah.
Like we're in a
hard to get a
era
transfer
now.
QB to come in. Hard to get guys to stay. Like it's hard for people to get behind that.
Like every skill position. Here's the deal.
Oh, he's concerned with offensive players coming into the program and staying there now all of a sudden? That'd be new.
PSA. Free PSA for if you are a skill position player at Iowa, go ask Kirk Ferentz if he's keeping Brian. If he says yes, transfer now. Like jump into the portal as fast as you can.
But people jumped into the portal last year.
I know.
Yeah.
It's not like that's not like that's like.
But if you have no players left and you have to pull a necessary roughness and just pull people out of
plenty of players on North Dakota State's roster they can go get.
They're not going to Iowa to play offense. They might get drafted if they play at North Dakota State.
You're saying Iowa's going to go get 3 fullbacks from North Dakota State?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
I can see that.
Oh, goodness. All right. In other coaching news, our Mitch Sherman and Bruce Feldman, plus ESPN's Chris Lowe, multiple people reporting that Nebraska has zeroed in on Matt Rhule. This is something that we've been chasing. When did we start chasing that, Max? Was that 2 days ago, 3 days ago?
A couple weeks now, really.
Yes. Yeah. That Rhule
on the Matt Rhule to Nebraska front. Yeah, it's been a little
right. But that when was it we heard, oh, it's his to lose? That was earlier this week. I think that was Wednesday.
A few days ago.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's been in the works. And we keep trying to figure out, is it the Panthers holding it up? Because obviously he's got an offset and a buyout from there. I don't know if that's it or what, but it does sound like that deal is coming to fruition now. What do we think of the hire, if indeed it is made?
Yeah, I thought Nebraska, like where Nebraska is actually at, is kind of an interesting conversation in its own. But like, I don't think this is like necessarily a bad time to take the Nebraska job.
No.
It is one of the few, 12, 15, 20 schools that can actually compete in NIL. They're opening up a new football facility next year. Obviously the roster rule changes, gives you a chance to come in and really kind of flip things pretty quickly. There's some real problems on the roster, but and I'm not saying they're a bold team next year by any means, but I don't think this is necessarily a bad time to take the Nebraska job. And I think for Matt Rhule, he's kind of the guy that it's in some ways it's like going to Baylor because he didn't really have any connections in Texas, and he rectified that and got the hang of things pretty quickly there. He doesn't really, he hasn't coached in the Midwest. He doesn't really have a ton of experience in this part of the country, but I think he'll adapt pretty quickly. And the biggest thing, I think you'll hear Trev Albert say it a million times at press conference is culture. Nebraska needs culture. That's the thing that's really
defined identity. That thing that Matt Rhule got clowned about. When I go into a store and I see Pepsi Cola, I know he was clowned for handing it out to the Panthers. But when he did it at Baylor, it made sense. And Nebraska, it makes
Sure.
sense too. This is a program that has lacked an identity since they fired Bo Pelini.
Max, is that what it is there? Like, do they need to go get a coach that is going to come in with some sort of genius plan on how he's going to restructure the program, how he's going to acquire talent, whether it be through the portal and recruiting, and come up with like a master plan? Or do they just need to get a guy that's going to have a functional and positive culture? Like, could it be that simple to fix Nebraska?
I mean, I think the recruiting obviously has to they need to do a better job in recruiting and retaining talent. There's no question about that. Mickey Joseph would tell anybody that.
But that probably is under the culture umbrella, though, right?
It is, yeah, for sure. But I think that's like, and you saw today, like with the fight they put up in a game that didn't matter to anybody but Iowa, right? Like this is still this is a group of kids that is like very tired of losing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I think that they're going to be receptive to Matt Rhule or whoever walks in there and wants to flip things around. This is a team that still, even with an interim coach, like still had some close games. And I think that, I think when I look at the Nebraska job, there's probably like 4 or 5 guys that I think if you put them in this position, you'd say, yeah, they're going to be fine. And I think Matt Rhule's one of them. I think that Matt Rhule it's interesting because he's got a lot of catching up to do. You guys know like how much this sport has changed since the end of 2019 when he was, leading Baylor to the Big 12 title game in the Sugar Bowl. Lots changed. And he took all of his people with him to Carolina for the most part. So they've been in the NFL for 3 years and they've kind of missed a lot in terms of the way the sport's evolved. But this is a job that, it might, like, I know Matt Rhule got called about bigger jobs last offseason, and I'm sure that was very tempting. This is a job that can compete in the Big Ten. Like we can like haggle over how good they should be in the Big Ten and the future Big Ten when USC comes in and UCLA come in. But I think that this is like a pretty good opportunity for a guy that likes a tough build.
Yeah. Look, listen, if they play like his Temple teams did with a little bit better talent, that's good enough to get you 8 wins, even in the new Big Ten. If they play like his Baylor teams in the new Big Ten, and if they're like his Baylor teams, if they're built like those Baylor teams, listen, those teams had dudes. Like a lot of the team that Dave Aranda won the Big 12 with last year was recruited by Matt Rhule. A lot of the really like the Jalen Petries of the world were recruited by that Matt Rhule
really
staff.
fast, like NFL Combine legit studs that they had a plan. These were 3-star guys, and they built great relationships and were able to build a pretty talented roster that played for multiple Big 12 titles.
Yeah. So I think he's got the right ingredients to be successful there. And we saw when he went to Baylor that he went and he hired himself a Sherpa. Joey McGuire was probably the most high profile of those hires. So he hired other people that were familiar with Texas, but Joey McGuire was kind of the biggest one. And Joey McGuire, now the head coach at Texas Tech. You kind of have to do this with this part of the world too, because at Temple, that was Matt Rhule's home turf. That's his part of the world. But this is a different world. My guess is he hires some people that are experienced in the Big Ten, that understand that region, that understand recruiting in that region and what you have to do to build a program. And I'm curious. I wonder, Max, because you were on this very early, knowing that they had reached out, that they had expressed interest in Matt Rhule. How much of the intervening time, like the week and a half that it's been since then, do you think has been Matt Rhule exploring what this job is about and how best to attack it?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We don't say this very often with these searches. The thing that's like kind of been hard to pin down during this one is like, how many times has Matt Rhule said no to this job so far before finally saying yes?
It does feel that way.
It does. I mean, there's even this morning we were hearing conflicting stuff about, is he still in it or is he out or whatever. I think that because of the situation he's coming from Carolina, where he has 4 years left on his contract, where he's going to make a lot of money next year if he's not coaching. I think like $8.5 million. He's kind of had the luxury to sit back and I think probably had kind of the leverage here against Trev Alberts of like, hey, you got to convince me why I want this job, kind of not the other way around here. And I think that I'm sure he's done his homework in terms of figuring out what a staff's going to look like and kind of what the situation is at Nebraska. And, look, there's some real red flags. I mean, I'm sure he's watched the tape and seen it. I mean, offensive line needs a total rebuild. They don't really have a quarterback for the future. Like there's a lot of spots where, O-line, D-line recruiting has got to get better, obviously.
If
like
only there were a way to flip your roster real quick in college football now.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't just take 5 offensive linemen out of the portal. It's hard to get some starter level. Maybe go to the MAC and take some, multi-year starters and stuff like that. But I mean, I think there's some obvious like roster challenges here that he's walking into. And I'm sure he's done his homework on that. And honestly, if he was like at all reluctant about this job, I'm sure just you guys know his personality. Like if he says yes to this thing, he's going to be all in and he's going to be fired up and he's going to, I think, win the press conference for sure.
I got the sense watching him on Good Morning Football, the two days he did there, he wants to coach. It was just a matter of, does he want this job? Because he could have sat for a year and then had his pick of a few different jobs and maybe one of them would have been more attractive. So I think he, like you said, Max, probably had to be talked into this job pretty thoroughly.
Well, the thing that I think I took away from this, if it were to happen, guys, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is, maybe a few months ago I would have thought, is this job turning into a dead end job? Or is this a place that's just impossible to win now, no matter how bad you want to convince yourself that you can? But if he takes this
honestly,
job,
I think that's one of the big questions he had to ask through this process too. I'm sure.
And if he takes the job with all the money that he has coming in, you said 4 more years?
Yeah.
It's like 40 mil or something like that.
Mil.
Yeah. To put himself in a position where there's going to be a lot of hard days, a lot of hard work to build it. Maybe that's what he enjoys. But it kind of makes me feel like if Matt Rhule can see a way, then there's still a way, Yeah.
I think that's well said. And I think, I think the Frost era, there was a lot of I don't necessarily look at the Frost era as like a reflection of like it can't be done in Nebraska. I think there was a lot of mistakes made. I think it's way more complicated than just one guy messing up as much as he did. But I think, you're right, Ari. It is like this search was going to be like a pretty fascinating kind of validation of how is this job viewed. And
like if they had a hard time getting somebody legitimate that's already been in the positions that Rhule has been in, that might put together the puzzle for you. Like nobody wants this job.
And if Rhule is a no, I mean, this was probably going to go in some interesting directions.
Yeah, this is, and that's the deal here. I think what puts this job still in the realm of you can get somebody pretty big is the NIL piece of it. Mm-hmm. Because Nebraska has the level of support and the level of passion around it that they will be able to have a robust NIL collective.
Yeah. And you have to be savvy enough, too, to know where it's headed in the Big Ten. This might be one of the 32 best jobs in America at a certain point, if it's not already. So,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, if you see this as the power 2, then this job is viewed a little bit differently. And I think you're right, Andy. Like, I think that, and I've talked to staffers at other schools who were kind of like hoping their coach would get this job. And NIL was the number one reason, because I think you guys got to appreciate that, there's just, the haves and have-nots is like a pretty clear divide here already. And I think that some people just look at the Nebraska opportunity and they've got a strong collective that Matt Davison has taken over. They know, like, man, I would just love to be at a place where I have that ability to go out and get players.
It feels similar to Tennessee. Now, Tennessee is obviously geographically closer to a lot more players where they are. But other than that, they were not winning, but they had this massive amount of passion, massive amount of resources. And they've been able to put together some very good NIL money very fast. And then they started winning, and it's like, oh, then it gets supercharged. So
you guys ever see that show on the History Channel called Counting Cars?
Yeah.
You watch that?
No.
It's just a show about this body shop that goes and drives around and buys junker body frames of cars and then reassembles them into something awesome. And it's just like, if you are a coach, I'd rather buy the junked out 1969 Corvette Stingray frame and build that than start with a Ford Focus, And I think that maybe that's a terrible analogy, but I do think that the bones are there still.
The bones are there. And geography, you and I are talking about this all the time, Ari. Geography used to be the most important thing in recruiting, and that's one of the things that killed Nebraska.
Yeah.
Geography is less important.
It's getting less and less important every year, too.
Yeah. So if there's a chance for them to come back, it's now.
But who are the 2 best destinations for transfers in America, just off the top of your head? I think there's 2.
Ole Miss.
Okay, 3.
Yeah, SC's pretty good.
SC.
Mine were going to be UCLA and Nebraska. I think that UCLA is a hell of a place to wind up.
It is
the second go around.
It's harder to get in there. You know, you can't take as many people. Nebraska can take it, just about anybody who wants to come.
Yeah.
So that's
and that's going to be a big part of it. I mean, that's going to be a big part of just kind of, can you go out and get the right kind of pieces to try to expedite this thing, as we've seen so many coaches do here in this 22 season. And I think it's going to be, for Nebraska, it's also like the challenge. And I think Matt Rhule is not going to have, as much as he needs to adapt a little bit to the job in the conference, the thing that I don't think he's going to have a very hard time with, that Nebraska has, it's kind of escaped Nebraska for a while now, is like, can you like get 85 or some like 50 or whatever number of players in your program who really want to be there and who really want to work hard, and like who just won't leave at the drop of a hat. Like, I think that's the thing. And I've written about this before, about that held Frost back to lose, 40 guys out of his first few recruiting classes and stuff. Like, you just need to be able to get guys that are bought into what you're doing and getting better. And I think that, as basic as that is to say, I think that's one thing Matt Rhule definitely has, the kind of track record that Trev Alberts is looking for.
And we think that Nebraska could be a place to get a guy like Jackson Dart, right?
Yes.
Like, could it be a place where a guy like that goes, like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you get some legitimate players that are,
like Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska can drop 6 figures for a transfer.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just not a ton of schools that can say that.
Right. And so they can get some impact transfers. They have to evaluate well, but this is going to be, if Matt Rhule's past is any indication, they'll be a good evaluating staff. So that part I'm not too worried about. Now, they're going to give him some money. He's going to need to go find the right people to be in the, I don't even call it the recruiting department anymore, the player personnel department.
Right.
The ones who recruit the portal and tell you, hey, we think this guy's going to hit the portal. He's really good. He fits in here. This is what he can do here. Because I'm with you, Ari. I think the way you make Nebraska a winner is you do develop guys you recruited out of high school, but you plug in people who can instantly contribute from the portal, because you can give them an opportunity to come and they'll say, oh, you guys take this very seriously. If I blow up, I'm going to make a ton of NIL money. You still put guys in the NFL even when you weren't winning. Like,
all you got to do is slip on the Coldest Crawford tape, show them the air conditioning commercial.
And look at, I mean, you guys saw it today. Like, okay, so where did Trey Palmer rank among LSU's receivers last year, Andy? Not top 3, 4, 5,
4,
right?
Yeah,
he just came in and had the best season by a receiver in Nebraska history in terms of yardage. Like,
right.
so it's like a guy that maybe like is not starting over the 5 stars at LSU could come to Nebraska and be one of like the better players in the Big Ten. It's possible.
Yeah, especially as it's currently constructed.
So there's a path. And it feels like Matt Rhule will be the one trying to lead them down that path. And I guess we'll find out how he does. Find out how much money. I don't even know how much money Nebraska's paying, and I guess how much the Panthers aren't paying, because the Panthers still probably have to pay a little bit. But we'll find all that out, I imagine, in the next few days. Guys, it was fun. We got Florida and Florida State playing right now. We got a bunch of big games tomorrow. This is going to be a fun weekend. We'll talk to you later.